Hey, happy Friday. I want to talk a little bit about the assignments that are due this Sunday. I had a couple questions from some students yesterday, and I'm hoping this video and email will help out a little bit. There are three Chapter 1 activities or assignments. There's one on authoritarian, one on authoritative, and one on permissive style. I want you to know that the worksheets are the same, except that you're looking at each of those different topics but with the same questions so that you can hopefully start to compare and contrast them. So they each kind of start off like, what are the characteristics? What do you make your decisions on, discipline decisions on if you're thinking in that mode, in that particular style of discipline. The ones that you most frequently use, those are going to be, again, all from that one perspective. It gives you an example and then how you might react if you were in that particular discipline style. It also talks about the effects of that technique on children, and then kind of evaluating it. Is it long-term effective? Is it effectiveness towards self-esteem and self-discipline and self-esteem? So those are the same. So the worksheets are going to look very similar. I want you to be thinking about what was covered in Chapter 1. You can also, there are some resources on D2L around Chapter 1 and these three types of styles. You can also choose to do some of your own research online and embed that in here. I'm not looking for you to write a ton, but I am wanting to make sure that you fully understand what the differences are between these three different types of styles of discipline. So make sure that all three are completed. You know, again, not tough questions, but really thinking about them in the different format. What I would really encourage you to think about as well for these three is to know that which is the one that you probably react or use the most. Each of us have a tendency to either be authoritative, authoritarian, or permissive. And that's from a multitude of factors. It's thinking back about how we were raised, what were the guidance styles and techniques used with us, whether we embrace them or not. They're kind of embedded with us. So we all kind of have a kind of standard go-to, what you would normally react to. What I would also challenge you to think about is, as you're doing these, even if you have one that you relate to more, and again, it doesn't have to be the one that might seem the best for kids, it's just the one that you probably use. I'll be very honest, my parents were kind of like, it's my way or the highway. They were very authoritarian. There was a lot of guilt as well as threats involved, and so that impacted me in a lot of different ways. When I get stressed, that's what I kind of want to revert back to because it's how I was raised and what I know the most of. What I have to do is intentionally not react. I have to think about, there might be times when authoritarian is the best method. Maybe it's like around a safety concern. I'm not going to sit down and say, hey, let's talk about whether or not you should run out into the middle of the street to get that ball. I'm probably going to say, stop, you can't go into the street. I'm going to be, very forceful. It's going to be no negotiation. That's going to be what's going to happen. There are other times when I want them to be learning, and that's going to be the authoritative. And then there's going to be the permissive where no one really cares. And again, so I want you to dive into these, but know that there might be times during the day, every day, that you're going to need to be able to pull each of these three out and use them. I like to think of them as different tools in a tool belt. So maybe your flathead or your Phillips screwdriver is the thing that you use the most, but it doesn't mean that sometimes you might need a hammer because you need to put a nail in the wall. And the back of a screwdriver, a handle of a screwdriver, could maybe get that nail in the wall, but a more effective tool would be a hammer. You might need to, you might have a bolt instead of a screw, so you need to have a wrench or a socket wrench instead of the screwdriver to work something in. And so kind of think about having all of these, not that you should throw any of them away, but understanding their effectiveness and when they're effective and when to appropriately use them. And then also with which child. So as you're doing these assignments, it's helping you understand how these tools work and when they might be effective. So be keeping that in mind as you go through this. And I hope this helps a little bit as you're doing these 3 assignments.